Ever get stuck in that situation where you gotta see your ex, like, regularly after a breakup?
Ugh, it's the worst.
Yeah, it's rough. So today we're gonna deep dive into that whole mess. We found this awesome conversation between a podcast host and a relationship coach.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and they were talking all about how to handle running into your ex, like, all the time.
That's so helpful. I feel like so many people go through that.
Totally. And the cool thing is they cover it all, like the emotional stuff and the practical strategies.
Okay, so like starting with the feels.
Exactly. Like we all know trying to just bury those feelings, well, it kind of backfires,
Oh,
right?
yeah. The coach in the podcast had this awesome analogy. She was like, it's like if you have a wound, right, you don't just ignore it and expect it to magically heal itself.
Right.
You have to like clean it, treat it, and give it time. And she said heartbreak's the same way.
Hmm. That makes total sense. But it's so tempting to just
Mm,
try and rush the whole process, like
Right.
almost to prove you're over it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Tons of people fall into that trap. They try to distract themselves or like jump back into the dating right away.
Right.
But it's like, she said, it's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
Yeah.
You can only keep it down for so long and then whoosh, pops back up, probably smacks you in the face.
Ouch. That's a good one. Okay, so we gotta let ourselves feel those feelings. But then there's the whole urge to reach out to your ex. Like those late night I miss you texts or those just checking in messages.
Ugh. Yeah, the rebound reach out.
Oh, is that what they call it?
Yeah, that's what she calls it. Basically, it's that like impulsive urge to contact your ex right after the breakup. Usually because you're, sad, lonely, maybe a little regret mixed in.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you're super vulnerable right after a breakup. So reaching out is like almost always a bad idea.
Oh yeah. It's like that saying, never make a decision when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Right.
Well, add freshly heartbroken to that list for sure. So how do we like resist that urge?
Well, the Covey had this really interesting tip. She said, every time you feel that urge to reach out, just grab a pen and paper and write down 3 reasons why it's a bad idea. Like right then and there.
Hmm.
She said something about actually writing it down makes it like more real in your mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Plus, you can look back on it later when you're tempted again.
Clever. It's like a preemptive self-intervention kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the classic unfollow on social media, not to be petty or anything. But
No, totally. It's not about being petty. It's about protecting yourself, from seeing constant reminders and stuff that might trigger you. You're giving yourself space to heal without, like, little digital jabs to the heart every time they post something.
yeah, yeah. Which I guess becomes even more important when you have to see your ex in person all the time. No unfollow button for real life, unfortunately.
Right, exactly. And that's where, like, setting those clear boundaries comes in. Keep your interactions with them professional, super brief, and definitely absolutely steer clear of personal conversations.
Gotcha.
It's about shifting away from that whole ex-relationship vibe to something more neutral, almost like a coworker.
So no more like casual chats by the water cooler or gossiping about other coworkers.
Exactly. Think of it this way. If you wouldn't say it to a random coworker, you probably shouldn't be saying it to your ex.
Ooh, that's a good rule. Okay, that makes sense for those little interactions. But what about if you're like stuck working on a project together or have to be in meetings with them, where you'd have to actually interact?
Yeah, that's tougher. But in those situations, you just got to focus on keeping things strictly work-related. Come prepared, have your talking points ready, stick to the agenda, and just politely redirect if they try to veer off into something personal.
So like what if they start reminiscing about that funny inside joke?
Yeah,
Or if they ask you how you're doing in that like loaded way that makes you want to crawl under the table?
totally. You just got to shut it down. Politely, but, shut it down. The coach actually gave some great phrases for that.
Oh, like what?
Like, you could say something like, I'd rather not discuss that right now, or let's just keep things focused on work. Okay.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. It's polite, but it's firm.
Yeah, it's definitely sending a message. And I like that we don't owe them an explanation, right?
Totally. Your boundaries are valid, period.
I love it. Okay, this is all great, super helpful. But I gotta ask, what about the awkwardness? Like all those accidental glances, the tension. I mean, how do you deal with all that?
It's so normal to feel awkward. It makes sense. Like you had this whole relationship with this person. But the coach had a good point. She said the more you, like, Focus on yourself and your own growth. Well, all that awkwardness starts to, like, fade away.
So it's not about pretending the awkwardness isn't there. It's more about where we're putting our attention.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, you know that saying, what you focus on, it commands.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're, like, hyper aware of your ex all the time, they're going to feel like they're taking up all the space, you know?
Yeah.
But if you can shift your attention to other things, like your work, your friends, that pottery class you've always wanted to take, it just kind of dilutes their impact.
Oh, that's a good way to think about it. Like you're creating a little buffer zone.
Exactly. A buffer zone. And you know what else the coach recommended?
What's that?
Power posing.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I've heard of that. It's like striking a confident rose even if you don't feel confident.
Exactly. It might feel silly, but apparently it can actually change how you feel. Like there's research and stuff that shows it can decrease your stress hormones and even boost your confidence hormones.
Whoa, so it's like fake it till you make it, but with science behind it.
Pretty much. And the more you do it, the more natural it'll feel. Plus, your ex will probably notice that shift too, you know?
Right. Like, whoa, they seem really confident. Good for them.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
I love that. So it's like turning those awkward run-ins into these little confidence boosters. But it's not just about how we handle those moments, right? Like there's the whole process of actually moving on and growing after the breakup.
Right? That's the important stuff. The coach was really big on seeing this time as like a huge opportunity for growth, a chance to rediscover yourself and all that.
Okay, I love that idea. But how do we actually do that? Like what are some concrete steps we can take to actually thrive after a breakup?
Well, think about things you really enjoy. You know, hobbies you might have put on hold or skills you've always wanted to learn. Maybe you finally join that pottery class or sign up for those French lessons or start writing that novel you've been dreaming about.
Or finally learn to play the ukulele?
Exactly. It's about channeling that energy you might have been spending on the relationship into something positive, you know, for you.
Hmm. It's almost like that Marie Kondo thing, but instead of decluttering your closet, you're decluttering your life. Getting rid of the stuff that doesn't serve you and making space for new things.
Yes, I love that. It's about creating a life that you love, a life that reflects who you are now. And as you do that, you'll find that your ex just becomes less and less important to your happiness.
That's a really good point. It's like shifting your focus from what you lost to all the amazing things you can gain. But what about those days when it just feels really hard? You know, when the sadness comes back and it feels like you're taking one step forward and two steps back.
Oh, those days are totally normal because it was really clear about that. Healing isn't a straight line. It's messy. You know, there will be ups and downs for sure.
So we shouldn't beat ourselves up if we have a bad day or if we like fall back into old patterns.
No, not at all. Be kind to yourself, especially when you're feeling down. Let yourself grieve, let yourself feel those emotions, and just know that you're doing your best, you know?
It's like learning to ride a bike. You're going to wobble, you might even fall a few times, but eventually you'll find your balance and be cruising along.
I love that. And remember, you don't have to go through this alone. Talk to your friends and family, or maybe even think about talking to a therapist. Just having that extra support can make a huge difference.
So even if there are days when it feels like you're back at square one, you don't give up. You acknowledge those feelings, you dust yourself off, and you keep going.
Exactly. It's a process, not a destination.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, exactly.
This has been like so helpful. Seriously, thanks for breaking all this down. It's well, it's complicated stuff.
Of course. Glad it was helpful. These kinds of conversations are so important. You know, they remind us we're not alone in all this and that there are ways to deal with it, like, in a healthy way.
Totally. So for everyone listening, just remember, let yourself feel those feelings. Don't do that rebound, reach out thing. Set those boundaries and focus on like all the good stuff you can do for yourself, you know, grow and all that. You got this.
And be kind to yourself along the way. It takes time, and it's not like a perfect straight line to being, over it. Celebrate those small wins, and if you have a setback, well, learn from it and keep going.
So well said. Now, one last thing to think about. What's like one small change you could make in your routine or, I don't know, your environment to maybe help minimize running into your ex and just to make things a little more positive for yourself and maybe take a different route to work, find a new lunch spot, or even just rearrange your desk. It doesn't have to be huge.
Yeah, little things can make a big difference. It's about taking back control, consciously creating a life that feels good, that supports you while you're healing and growing.
That's a great point. Well, that's all the time we have here today. Until next time, keep diving deep. And remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you've got this. 22, 18, 90.